Assalamu alaikum guys. In today's uh, video clip I'm going to elaborate that what is the accounting errors, what is the meaning of accounting errors, classification, and the impact of such accounting errors on the accounting records. So before going to start, what are accounting errors? We know that the first step in the accounting cycle is the journal, and the next step is the ledger, and the third step is the trial balance. So in most of the cases, the in the recording of the data, that while maintaining the accounting books, certain mistakes are being committed in the journal or in the ledger, and which automatically moves transfers to the towards the trial balance. So there can be different locations at which the such types of the errors can be incurred. That it may be incurred in the journal, or it may be incurred in case of the ledger, or they may be incurred in the trial balance. So usually the errors are the non-fraudulent. Keep one thing in your mind, that these accounting errors are usually described as these are not intentional mistakes, or these are non-fraudulent uh, instances, that is unintentional mistakes in the accounting records. These are known as the accounting errors. There are two main types of the accounting errors, that one is the bookkeeping errors and one is the trial balance errors. So simply those errors which are being incurred in the accounting in the bookkeeping section, that is in the journal or in the ledger, usually in the journal or in the ledger. These sort of the accounting errors are known as the bookkeeping errors, while on the other hand, the errors which are incurred unintentionally in the trial balance are known as the trial balance errors. Again, the bookkeeping errors have been divided into four types, that is the errors of omission, errors of commission, errors of principal, and errors of compensation. So first of all, what do we mean by the error of omission? What are the chances, what are the instances that the error in the accounting records will be termed as the errors of omission, or how one could identify that what sort of the errors are treated, are considered as the errors of omission. So there is a very simple formula for identifying the errors which can be classified as the errors of omission, that whenever if a certain transaction has been missed, or there is a certain entry, a certain amount which has been omitted, that is not been recorded. For example, if there are purchases of 1500, or there are the purchases of 2000, and such purchases have been unintentionally missed, that they are not being recorded in the accounting books. So such type of the error is known as the errors of omission. Or sometimes if an entry recorded in has been recorded not for the uh, sometime for example, if there is an amount and that is that is short of the original amount. For example, if there is some for example, there is a some value, for example, of 1200, but that is recorded, for example, instead of the for example, instead of 1200, as for example 1000. So that is the case of the error of omission, that for example the original the amount which is entered is short of the original amount, that will be considered as the error of omission. So basically there are two major types of the errors of omissions, that if a particular entry has been omitted, that is not recorded in the accounting records, it will be treated as the error of omissions. And on the other hand, if a particular entry is being entered but that is short of the original amount, that will be treated as the that will be treated as the error of omission. Now, what is the effect of the errors of omission on the agreement of the trial balance? They basically, the errors of omission basically do not affect the agreement of the trial balance. Why? Because in such cases, our debits will always be equal to the credits. For example, if a particular entry has been completely omitted, for example, that is, a purchases are, for example, fully committed, let's say. So uh, when a particular entry amount is fully omitted, so in that case debits will be equal to the credits. And if some amount, for example, is being recorded short of the original amount, so in such case the debits and the credits will be equal. So the errors of omission does not affect the agreement, that is, it does not affect the total of debit and credit. So these two sorts of the errors are known as the errors of omission. The basically the most important errors of the in the accounting errors are the errors of errors of commission. So in most of the instances, most of the types, the majority of the errors will be the errors of the commission. So there are various instances in which these sort of the errors are being committed. For example, a mistake in being a balancing of the balancing an account. For example, there is a difference between the total of the debit and the total of the credit, so it will be termed as the error of commission. Or for example, a common mistake is the transfer of the information from the journal to the ledger, that is mistake in the in the posting, that is when the information are being transferred from the journal towards the towards the ledger. So this process is called as the posting. So a mistake in the posting will be a type of the error that will be known as the error of commission. Beside that, for example, if an amount is being transferred to the wrong side of an account, for example, a certain balance was to be transferred to the debit side of an account, but mistakenly it has been transferred to the credit side, so that will be the error of the omission. Or for example, there is a particular amount has been transferred to a wrong account. For example, if a certain amount was to be transferred to the purchase account while it has been for example transferred to the sales account, so that will be also the example of the error of the commission. Or a wrong entry in the original books of the record, that will be treated as the error of commission. Or for example, an item is posted twice. For example, a particular amount has been recorded twice, that will be the example of the error of commission. Or sometimes a particular entry is transferred to a wrong account. For example, a particular amount was needed to be transferred uh, to the capital account of A's, but it was mistakenly transferred to the capital account of B's. So all these are the examples of the errors of commission, that is a mistake in the transfer of the information from the journal to the ledger, or a mistake in the balancing of the account, or a wrong posting of the account, or a wrong posting to the in the case of the account, or twice or double posting in account. That will all will be treated as the errors of commission. So most of the uh, in cases, the errors we will confront will be the type of the errors of commission. So in the third one is the errors of principles. As we know, there are different rules and regulations. For example, if we do follow the US GAAP, that is the generally accepted accounting principles, we need to follow certain rules and regulations, that is the standards which are being set by such board. So in case when there is the violation of such principles, and the errors arising out of such instances will be treated as the errors of principle. For example, we know that there are two sort of the accounts. One is the, for example, the capital expenditure, and the other one is the revenue expenditure, for example. So in some cases we need to differentiate that what is the capital expenditure and what is the revenue expenditure. So sometimes there has been a mistake in recording the revenue expenditure and the capital expenditure. For example, a value of the revenue expenditure nature was recorded as the capital expenditure. So this is an error, and that will be the example of the error of principle, that a particular principle was being violated, it was not followed. Or for example, we know that there are the bad debts. So there is a provisions which is kept by the organization of firms for the such bad debts. So if there is the improper provision, or there is the inadequate provision for such bad debts, that will be the example of the error of principle. For example, there is the insufficient depreciation. So this is a type of the error of the principle. For example, the omission of adjustment. For example, you did not adjusted the prepaid accounts, for example prepaid expenses, or for example unearned income, or for example the outstanding expenses. So all these are the examples of the errors of principles, that you need to follow a particular principle. For example, if you did not properly adjusted the, for example, prepaid expenses or the outstanding expenses, so you are going to violate the, for example, the matching principle. Or you did not record a revenue account as a capital expenditure account, so you did a violation of the capital a violation of the rule that is against the gap principles. So you, all sorts of the principles, if they are being violated, so such type of the errors will be considered as the errors of principle. And last but not the least is the errors of compensation. These are the errors which uh, uh, there are a number of the transactions, for example, that have been committed, so they may cancel themselves. For example, there are a number of the errors, and which eventually result in equal debits and credits. Such types of the errors are difficult to locate. These are the errors of the compensations, and these three types of the errors, that is the error of omission, error of commission, and error of the compensation. These three are basically known as the clerical errors as well, the clerical mistakes or clerical errors as well. And the next one is the balance the trial balance errors. So the trial balance errors are those which are being incurred while preparing in the trial balance. That is when the first two steps of the accounting cycle, that is the journal and the ledger, have been finalized, have been completed. So the next step is the preparation of the trial balance. So those errors which are incurred in the trial balance will be known as the trial balance errors, while those errors which are being incurred in the preparation of the journal and the ledger will be known as the bookkeeping errors. So these are the types of the errors. So what is the impact if there are the errors in the bookkeeping error? Are there the trial balance errors? So such errors will eventually will be reflected in your financial statement, that is in income statement, in the balance sheet, and your financial statements will not present a fair and true picture of the organizations. So these sorts of the errors are natural. These are usually non-fraudulent, but there are rules and regulations, but there are tactics that how such errors can be minimized or how they can be located. So these are the types of the errors. Most of the accounting interviews, in most of the accounting MCQs and tests, such types of errors are being asked, that you will be given a particular example of the error, and you will be asked that what is the nature of that particular accounting error. For example, is it a type of the error of omission or commission, or principal or compensation. So simply all those errors, accounting errors which are incurred in the journal or in the ledger, will be treated as the bookkeeping errors. There are four types: errors of omission, commission, principal, and compensation. If a particular entry has been omitted, that is not being recorded, or it is being recorded short of the original. So this is usually the type of the error of commission. In the error of commission, if there is a mistake in the balancing of the account, if there is the wrong posting, for example, of the wrong posting, or there is, for example, a particular account was being debited instead of being credited, or there is a double entry, for example, a double posting, there may be a particular amount was to be transferred to the capital account of A, but it was mistakenly transferred to the capital account of B. So these are types of the errors which are the errors of commission. And whenever there will be the violation of the accounting principles, and the errors which will arise as a result will be treated as the errors of principles. For example, the differentiation between the capital and revenue expenditures, for example, the or the improper provision for the bad debts, insufficient depreciation, or for example the proper adjustment, in the proper adjustment, for example, of the prepaid expenses, or for example unearned income, the outstanding expenses, etc. So these are the errors principle. So this was a brief elaboration, explanation of the accounting errors. Hopefully this video will help you in understanding the concept of the accounting errors and their classification.